Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with Season 5, Episode 8 of our weekly Q&A&T. This is actually Season 5, Episode 8, Part 2, because there's a lost episode where we recorded like a full-length video, and then it ended up, there was a lot of technical difficulties, and then right at the end we realized that my computer had frozen for a bit and missed some audio, and it was absolutely impossible to match back up. That's so right. It was kind of a mess, and now it's gone forever, and we can move on to a fresh video. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with newer questions, and then we are going to work our way down and then start back up at the top with the questions from that lost video. And really sorry to anybody whose questions are maybe going to get a little bit less focused, because some of them are even from as early as last week, because we didn't do a Q&A&T because we got so busy. Right. But now, unfortunately for the people who asked the questions, we missed them, so they were old, and then we talked about them and then they got lost again. So there's been a lot of barriers to us actually addressing your questions, and a lot of reasons why they may be a little less relevant than when you ask them. So I want to say sorry right off the bat for that, but
school and tech,
that's a little bit inevitable. So we've talked enough about ourselves and all the multitude of mistakes and issues that we've had with creating content, but let's actually get to the question part of our Q&C&A&T. I think I just called it a Q&A initially. So our first question comes from Loud Pack Alfredo, and they say, I have both Dark Knights, Metal Batman's Elite 7 level 50, but the event disappeared after I opened the chest. Is that how it goes, or is my game effing me? And yeah. I'm not censoring that. That's actually what is said here.
Yeah, I see, and I don't think the game is effing you. I think, to me, clearly you are effing the game. Mm-hmm. And this is the part I like, because there's a lot of math involved, but it's not straightforward math. Some of it is you have to make reasonable guesses, and I think if you don't have the background of actually playing the game, it's harder to actually come up with a good estimate.
Yeah, and I think this math makes it very obvious what's happened here.
So yeah, let's start with the math that actually is fixed, and I think in one of the later questions we're going to get into more sort of estimates. Yeah. So clearly this Laupac Alfredo, you're a hacker. To get to Elite 7, you need 44 copies, right? So we went through this previously, but it's probably worth rehashing just one more time quickly. You get one copy to start, which is Elite 0. You need one more copy to get to Elite 1, and that's where it changes. Yeah. 2 to Elite 2, 4 to Elite 3, 6 to Elite 4, 8 to Elite 5, 10 to Elite 6, and 12 to Elite 7. So my question really is, to Laupac Alfredo, why are you even doing the Phantom Zone event?
Yeah, it almost seems like there's no point, because you can have as many credits as you want for nothing.
Oh, I know why. He's not a hacker. He's a script kiddie.
Oh. What?
All right, so maybe that distinction. All right, so I should explain that for the people who are listening who don't understand the difference, right? So yeah. A script kiddie is somebody who uses somebody else's program to do stuff.
And just basically runs a program.
Right, and they're not doing the hacking. So the most common kind of programs are the ones that let you make purchases at no cost.
Oh.
So you can buy a ton of nth metal, but you can't buy a Valorium alloy. And Valorium alloy you get from the Phantom Zone and use that to upgrade all the specials. So even though Laupac Alfredo has them all Elite 7 level 50, they're going to have crappy specials because they can't be upgraded without the Valorium.
Oh, that makes sense.
So even though they might have the really high stats, right?
Yeah.
The
specials are going to be mediocre. You're not going to be able to have them at their full potential.
Not even mediocre. They're going to be weak.
Yeah.
They're going to do very little damage, and they're going to take a long time to build up to the dark energy.
Oh, so there we go. That makes sense. That's a revelation that I... Is it revelation? Revelation. Revelation. That's a... Yeah, it sounded wrong when I said it. That's a revelation that I have not had. That's interesting.
Yeah, no, it just occurred to me now. I mean, I had notes and stuff, but I hadn't thought about it until now, and that is it. Yeah. So that's going to be an awful kind of grind, because you're going to... I mean, I have to do the math and look back. We can probably see what it takes based on the video we had with the Batman Who Laughs. But you're talking like thousands and thousands of Valorium alloy to max out the specials.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay.
So, all right. So the actual answer to the implied question, because the question is the game effing me? We answered that, but the implied question is, when's the Phantom Zone coming back?
Yeah, and so that ties right into our next question. I love that little segue from Alex Martinez, and they say, I haven't been able to get the Phantom Zone back. Any advice? Thanks for your question, Alex. A lot of people have been having the same one.
Yeah, so clearly it is not a weekly event because it didn't come back after week, as much as everyone might hope for that. And I've been doing some reading about how people were time shifting to reset it and repeat it. And so I suspect it's going to be monthly, but I can't be certain about that, right?
Yeah.
The problem is that it's an event that requires an internet connection, so time shifting for that generally doesn't work because it requires the correct date plus a signal from the server.
Yeah.
So while the event was running, people were able to time shift far enough to mess around with the Phantom Zone, and maybe we even talk a little bit about that later in another question. And it seemed like they were getting hits around 1 month ahead if they're time shifting that far ahead.
Yeah.
But you can't do that now because there's no signal from the server, right? So
yeah, you can only get half of the required components to actually.
Right. So you've got the right. Even if you shift to the right date, you don't get the signal from the server, then you won't get a current Phantom Zone. So the game's not effing with you. It is just they just have been giving us insufficient information, and everybody was hoping it was weekly, but clearly it's not.
It'll take literally forever. Not literally, obviously, but it'll take a time of, considering the lifespan of mobile games, a time that might be indistinguishable from forever for metal characters getting completely deleted. Like it's going to be truly insane.
That's the next question, which is the one that's going to sort of build on all the ones we've answered up until now.
So our next question comes from Cameron Squire, and they say there's only a low chance of getting a metal character, but since there's a glitch to get through the zone trials easily and you get nth metal, that will eventually allow you to buy the metal pack. There's no point in not trying it. I do wish the rate was higher though. It's going to take forever to get elite versions of these characters the way they set it up. So thanks for your, I guess this is more of a comment. This isn't actually a question. I realized at the end.
There's our C.
Yeah, there's our C.
All right, so here's the math I like. All right, so on average, you're getting about half the amount of an nth metal pack, or the cost of an nth metal pack, if you complete all Phantom Crystal Zones at an elite level, right? So you're getting about 45 runs. I mean, it's the equivalent of a run through Phantom Zone, but Cameron sort of alluded to this when they said that you're getting through the zone trials and not actually finishing. And when you finish and get the final one, it completely, for the people who are glitching it, it completely locks out Phantom Zone anyways. Yeah. So they can't do that. They have to do it up until then. So on average, you get about half the amount you need for a pack. So there's about a 3.5% chance to get either metal card in a pack. So that's about 2 in 30, I think. Is that right?
Give or take, yeah. 2 in 30 is like 3. It's like 3.33.
Oh no, that's 1 in 30. So that's 6.6 whatever. So that no. So for both, a 2 in 30 chance of getting either one of them, right? Like a combined chance, like 1 in 30 each. So we're looking on average about 15 packs before getting one metal character, either one, but not both, right? So 200 nth metal per Phantom Zone run, the equivalent of Phantom Zone run of 5 crystals. It takes 400 to buy a pack, so you need 2 Phantom Zone runs per pack. You're averaging 15 packs per metal card. If you're, again, we're talking about doing it legitimately, right? So that we can get into glitching it too. So 15 packs per metal card, that means 30 Phantom Zone runs per metal card.
Average, yeah.
88 copies to Elite 7 for both, so 44 each. That's 2,640 Phantom Zone runs.
Which is insane.
Okay.
Once a month? Crazy.
Yeah, alright, so let's do it with the glitching, right? So if you do the one a week, 52 weeks a year, that's 50 years. If you do it twice per week, 25 years.
Yeah, and we're not even getting it once per week. So we can't even get it in 50 years.
So that's if you glitch, right? Yeah. Now, what would be reasonable? 1 year? That would mean doing it, like resetting it and trying to do the trials 50 times in 1 week.
Yeah.
That is not worth it. Yeah, and that's 1 year later. So, so here's the thing. You can't really do the 5th one, and you don't get the re-roll. Sorry, you can't get the because if you were just doing a complete Phantom Zone run and had a chance at the metal characters,
yeah,
you could potentially reduce that time, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But based on that video that we did with 11 different completions of the Phantom Zone, out of 11 drops, we got 0. So to be, I'm sure the rate isn't 0 because people were getting it. So if we assume the drop rate is the same as the actual pack itself, which is about 3.5 for each of them. So 12 packs in 1 year, right? Once per month. You're on average getting less than 1 extra copy for each year. Each year that you're doing the Phantom Zone.
Which is insane.
Right. And now you can cut the time down a lot by using the airplane mode / refund glitch. So you get the same metal card, or you get at least 1 metal card every single pack. So that would be 44 copies out of 44 packs, or 88 copies out of 88 packs if you're trying to get both. So that's either 88 runs through Phantom Zone or 176 runs through Phantom Zone.
Yeah.
And if you do the equivalent of 2 or 3 runs per week, that's still more than a year.
Yeah.
Right? 35 weeks, 8 months for one of them, or, you know, a year and plus, maybe almost a year and a half for both.
And the crazy thing about it is, even if you use that method, it's probably going to be even longer before you can actually use those characters that high up, because you're going to be the only person with them. The only way to do that is to spend an insane amount of money or to glitch it. And, you know, we've run the numbers on both, and neither of them are actually feasible for like a real actual person to do. For you know, actually getting them bleeded up. So it's going to be a long time before it's safe to use them in multiplayer. And I mean, I would almost at this point, as long as like in a couple months, like I would just, I mean, not everybody's going to do this, but I would not report them, because at that point, a couple months in, like, I'd just rather people have it, honestly, if they want it that bad. If there's any chance that they've glitched it, the amount of work that it would take, that's one of those examples.
I know it's not trivial, right?
Yeah, that's one of the examples of, you know, like innocent until proven guilty kind of thing, where I would not want to be judged or an executioner on that particular person's account, because spending that amount of time at that point, you can't guarantee that that's what they've done, but if they have, they've earned it. Yeah,
it's not a non-trivial amount of time to actually do that. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how long it'll be until I decide that it's not worth reporting people who have it fully eluded, but you know.
And the kicker for me really is that it doesn't unbalance the game at all. Like they're okay, but they're not nearly as difficult to face as, say, the Red Sun team with Red Sun Green Lantern.
Sorry for that spike in audio of me accidentally smacking my mic. It wasn't particularly hard, but I don't know exactly how loud that's going to turn up in the...
I don't think it was too bad.
In the balance. Right. That's good. Okay.
So, moving along.
Our next question comes from Zecbonoes Z, and they say, I think NetherRealm wants you to hack. I didn't want to hack, but now it made me. So, this is a comment.
Yeah. I'm gonna say yes and no, maybe. I mean, I understand the motivation. I talked a little bit about the difference between script kiddies and hackers, and I think a lot of people who are showing up with the characters that, you know, basically anybody who's playing has a little bit of desire to have them. Yeah. So you can script kiddie in the nth metal, but you can't script kiddie in the Valorium alloy. I mean, you really do have to hack for that. So basically what you're going to see in the game is a bunch of decently powerful level 50 Elite 7 cards that have awful specials that are painfully weak without the Valorium alloy to upgrade. So yeah, you could, but it doesn't even get you where you want to go. Yeah. Ultimately, right? Yeah. So, and I guess nobody's going to, I mean, I'm sort of joking, right? It's not like there's any way that NetherRealm is doing anything to make people hack. If anything, they're doing something that'll make it easy to catch people who hack. But it's one of those things where when the bar is set so high that I don't even want to try, You know, where it's not like somebody does something really good and it makes you feel like, ooh, I want to do better. It's that, wow, this is so ridiculously impossible that I'm just not even going to bother trying for it.
Sure, you're right. I don't think NetherRealm wants you to hack, but I struggle to come up with a sort of logic that they applied in implementing this. You know? Like,
there's got to be some sort of rebalancing. Something's going to happen that's going to make either maybe make it easier to get the cards or easier to get the currency.
Yeah, because in the meantime, it's not even that much fun to earn it. And if they end up rebalancing it, what I imagine is going to happen for all the time that we spent is it might feel a little jippy, right? To have spent this time now. So, you know, I'm glad that there's a glitch, because if there wasn't a glitch, I feel like they need to rebalance, but I also feel like the more time that I put into it, the more I'm going to kind of be a little bit sour about it when they do finally rebalance.
Yeah.
And the longer that they spend before they, I don't know, fix this somehow, make it actually more enjoyable. Because the content's cool, but getting at it is kind of crappy right now.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, okay, our next question comes from...
two questions, right?
Yeah, these are two things. And I guess... one of these is a comment, and one of these is a comment with a kind of tagline on it. So first one comes from Conrad Andrew, and they say, "No, reports of Injustice Gods Among Us deaths were not exaggerated. These new op cards, which are impossible to get, are flooding multiplayer, making it impossible and add nothing to the game. All they will do is encourage people to hack, since it's so difficult to get them." And the next question, or next comment, and then question right at the end, is Chaitanya Joshi, and they say I was waiting for this game to die. My wait may be over. Fodder for the next Q&A&T. Injustice, dead game. So I like parts of both of these questions. Just from a writing standpoint, I like the reports of Injustice's death were not exaggerated. I think that's a funny callback.
Oh yeah,
and
that's true.
I think
so. Somebody actually watched the video and listened to it.
Yeah. And I like the question, Injustice, dead game?
It's like its own lead, you know, like they do in newspapers to tease you and make you read the article.
Yeah, it's like its own lead, or it's like its own, like, not quite clickbait title, but like more clickbait title. Like, I bet we would get more views if we titled our video that.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Because it depends on what you mean by a dead game or the death of a game, right?
Yeah.
Is it that the interest is dropping, or is it that the developers are giving up on it? Like, both ways are they're different kinds of deaths.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because this game is in a unique position as like a pseudo multiplayer game. So there's you know, shared online content, but it isn't actually like a full multiplayer game. So theoretically, people could keep playing it even if not that many other people were. This is the kind of game that could subsist off of a pretty small community.
Oh, all right. So you're talking about like a multiplayer game where it's dead because you can't find enough people to play with. I hadn't thought about it like that.
Yeah, a ton of games, multiplayer games, especially games that focus on multiplayer, can totally die. A game can be wonderful, and then you have literally like 30 people in the entire world playing it at once, and it's a dead game. Right? You know.
Right.
And
it's because you don't have enough sort of AI players to fill out your ranks, so that you're actually having to wait until everybody.
Or generally AI players aren't as good. Like generally, in recent years, AI players haven't been it. So there's a lot of games out right now that do live and die on their community, and that's why certain games have to, especially when they're multiplayer focused, have to respec later on to being free to play if they're not as successful, because if you're making people pay for a game and there's not enough people to enjoy it, nobody's going to buy your game, and if nobody's going to buy your game, it's just going to make your community burn out even faster. So you have to make it free to at least inject some life back into it.
Right, so it almost doesn't matter necessarily, like if you still enjoy playing it, from that perspective, the game is never going to die.
From that perspective, the game's never die. But if you have a server, if you literally can't find enough people to like play this game, I know. What was the game? It was called like Paragon or something. There was this game that was meant to be like a multiplayer game, and it was on Steam, and it was for money, and it died really quick. And there was a game called Battleborn 2 that came out at the same time Overwatch did, and just totally got trashed because the game was focused around playing multiplayer, and there just weren't enough people.
So I guess I'm thinking more along the lines of that a game like Injustice, where there aren't real people that you fight against.
Yeah, so I'm saying, like, right off the bat, this is a little bit of a different calculation than a lot of other games nowadays.
Right. And so the other perspective is when the devs stop supporting it, right? Yeah. So, all right, so here's the thing. Evaluation of 3.0, The content is good. It isn't great. The medals that we've already established are ridiculously hard to max out. And maxed out, they aren't even significantly better than the late game maxed out golds.
Yeah.
But, and I touched on this in our recap video last week, right?
Yeah.
They introduced entirely new mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
They screwed up parts of the game, but came out with a patch fix in less than a week. And they changed the numbering.
Yeah.
So, I don't think it's reasonable to expect that everything they do is going to be a hit. But the fact that these things are happening is an indication that man-hours are being put into the game, that the devs are still putting in some effort. Man, 5 years, right? This game's been around for 5 years.
Yeah, that's a long time, and I think it's more likely that they're going to put in the small amount of effort in whatever way they need to fix stuff, as opposed to just abandoning the project altogether at this point, with how much effort they put in and how recently.
Especially since this was originally supposed to be a tie-in for the console game, right?
Yeah.
It was never meant for standalone. It was a way to unlock content in the console game.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is, if anything, a sign of life.
Yeah. So there we go. And now that would be a pretty, I think, solid note to end it on. But we've got more time, and we've got old questions to answer again.
All right.
So we're going to go back up to the top. First question.
Can we do iProphets first?
Oh, you want to do iProphet? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go on iProphet. Okay. So iProphet 3 asks, can we take a moment and talk about cereal? It's crazy. I'm always left with a question at the end of each episode. Also, Veronica Mars, great choice. Maybe have a go at the miniseries Maniac. Have you tried Black Mirror? It's disturbing as F, and that time I did censor it. I couldn't get past a few episodes of season 1. So that's a great question. Yeah, we can take a moment to talk about cereal, actually. We both listened.
Can I digress from a digression first, though?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
There's a really cool Kickstarter on right now. It's about censorship, and it talks about the history of it. And I think there's maybe a couple days left. I'm supporting it, and I would suggest anybody with an interest in censorship and thinking that the kind of stuff that we just did right now, where you said, there's an F that you censored and an F that you didn't.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's going to be a really interesting project. It's going to be Cory Doctorow, who's a writer, and he's big on net neutrality and internet rights, and I think he's a consultant for the. Is it the EFF? What is that? Electronics Freedom Frontier?
Oh, I have no clue.
Ada Palmer, who's a history professor and a award-winning science fiction writer. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be pretty interesting. So anyway, sorry. Because when you said that this time you didn't censor it, I thought, oh, that's a nice intersection of stuff that's going on. But anyways, back to the...
Okay, so yeah, we can talk about cereal. I have listened to every episode that is currently out of all the seasons, and you've listened to season 1 and then the update to season 1 and then a little bit of season 3, right?
Right, and I actually took a deeper dive into Adnan Syed's by phone. There's another podcast, I can't remember the name right now.
Oh, the one that follows like the actual lawyers. Yeah, you mentioned that. I haven't got around to that yet.
It was pretty good.
Yeah, we've both listened to, I would say, a lot of Serial. And yeah, it's really, really good. You're right. I think what they do really well with the questions at the end of the episode is that they answer them. It's not just like and we talked about this last time. So I'm going to rehash a little bit, but that's just for me and you, I guess, not for the audience. But a lot of serialized fiction has an issue with this, especially when it's serialized fiction that is written as it's being posted and doesn't have too much lead time, which is that they'll want to keep people coming back, right? It's harder than like a novel where you're holding the whole thing in front of you, where you have to keep people coming back on a regular basis to catch up, or at least remember even like a month or two down the line to catch up, right? Because those numbers really matter. And what they do is they'll have like a cliffhanger, or they'll have a big question, they'll have what seems like a aha moment, and then not give you enough information to kind of have the closure on that. And then next week it'll be a really unsatisfying,
they cheat you out of the closure.
So you'll see like a door will open and one of the main characters will be like sitting there like gasping, and you're like, oh, what's gonna happen? And then like the next week they're like, oh, they spilled their coffee, help me clean it up,
See, this is why I think it was really cool that he mentioned Veronica Mars too, because Veronica Mars is a good example where, because it's not a serial, even though it might play like one, where each episode has its own structure, It works as a standalone episode where you can get engaged and just sort of drop in the world, but it has this big overarching structure that was clearly meant from the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason why the season 1 is so good and season 2 and 3 have been criticized for being disappointing is because that overarching structure, each episode is still just as good.
Yeah.
The overarching structure is gone because there was a huge payoff in season 1 that they clearly built towards. And the advantage of that was because they probably planned the whole season at once. They, Rob Thomas knew exactly where he was going to end up, which is different than where it actually is a serial where you're sort of going open-ended. You don't know ultimately how long you're going to be around for. And then
so you're still talking about Veronica Mars. Every time we say serial, it muddies it a little bit, but yeah.
That's true, yeah. But it makes it hard. So I'm talking about lowercase s serial.
We're talking about the serialized fiction, the television show Veronica Mars, and we have not talked about serial for a few minutes now. If anybody's been confused, we just keep saying the word serial and serialized.
So the classic example of serialized fiction would be something like I guess Charles Dickens, right? Where he's releasing a little bit at a time, and I'd have to imagine that some of them, like Pickwick Papers, for example, did not really have any kind of plan the same way that maybe one of his other books, like Great Expectations, which I think was also serialized, maybe felt more satisfying because at the end of it felt like a proper book and not just a bunch of vignettes, right?
Yeah, and it's good. And Serial, the podcast Serial, manages to accomplish a similar thing. Yeah, despite telling a real life story, there is an overarching structure in the questions. The big, oh my god, right? Like that's a big thing right before Sarah Koenig says next time on Serial. You know that the next episode is going to deal with, and not in a really short way, it's going to deal with those questions directly. And so you never feel cheated, right? When you're binging Serial back to back, you go, oh my god, and then you go right into the next episode. And then the question that was just put in your head is answered in a appropriate way. It's answered in a really positive way.
It's answered in a way that actually justifies that kind of cliffhanger, right?
Yeah, because it's they set it up, they know where they're going, right? And they say next time. They don't tell you, hey, this is, like a question. They don't just end it with, but where did all the cheese go? And then next episode, the beginning of it is like, nobody knows where all the cheese goes, but here's this other thing, there's a really good flow where the climaxes, the most interesting moment of each of the episode tends to happen towards the end of it, although the information all throughout is actually all really solid too. Like it's good throughout, and it kind of peaks at the end of each episode, and it gives you something. The thing I like about Serial, and especially listening to it live, is it actually does give you something to think about once you're done with it. And I think that's a hallmark of a lot of really good media, is that you can put it down and still think about it. And so I think Serial does a really good job of making you want to keep thinking about it even when the media isn't directly in front of you.
Right. No, I totally agree.
Yeah. And you've talked about a couple of other shows. I've watched some Black Mirror, and I've only watched a few episodes. It's kind of intense to, make a concerted effort to watch a lot, but I do plan on coming back to it. And the miniseries Maniac, I have watched a very small sliver of one episode, and it's interesting so far. It was a little bit quiet and slow, and I know there's a build-up, but I was watching it at a time that I didn't have a lot of time to dedicate to the show, and I literally only listened to watched. I always see when I listen to podcasts, I always say watched by accident, so I think I've overcorrected, and I listen to everything.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah, but so it seemed like a more intense show at a time where I was looking for a more kind of easy to consume, popcorn kind of show, and so I didn't quite get into it, but I also do plan on coming back to that. That's on my list in Netflix.
Okay, that's an interesting point you bring up too, because I think, at least with books, there's a lot of books that I recognize are good, but my favorites are always ones that sort of hit me at the right time in my life.
Yeah, and so they're not necessarily easy to recommend, especially if you're not sure how much the other person reads.
Yeah, and what their situation is too, right? Because if there's certain ideas and themes that would really connect with them because of where they are in their life, or maybe they're just not relevant at all.
Yeah. So I think totally there's... I mean, we all know that you don't have to like media just because it's subjectively good, and you don't have to dislike media just because it's subjectively bad. I think there's definitely there's a lot to be said about the specific position that you, the viewer, are in at the moment that you're watching it, right? Whether it's your viewpoints, your beliefs, whether it's just what you're in the mood for, if it's a time in your life in which some ideas might be challenging to you, or whether there's just you're not looking for a certain thing in books, even if you would enjoy it if you actually gave it a chance, or you are looking for a certain thing in books, even if it's not actually that enjoyable for you. You just don't know what else to look for. I think and that's the same for all media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. So there we go. I guess the moral of that is that I'm not offended if you don't like anything we recommend to you.
That's true.
And that's true for everybody I know.
Yeah.
But especially for you, the listener, because we don't know if you consume a piece of media that we recommend and you don't like it. We can't tell.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think we're gonna end it off with the first question from the lost episode, which is from...
Oh, really? The first one?
Yeah.
I like the second one, actually. Second one's interesting to me. I think it'd be more...
We'll save the second one, but I like the first one. I think we'll give it its due diligence. We'll try to come back to these, maybe spread them out a little bit. The first question comes from Andrew Jacobson. And this is the first question from last time, the last question from this time. So Andrew Jacobson asks, this is a different kind of question, but who would you design the Swamp Thing as a character in Injustice? What would the passive be? Abilities? And I think this is one of those good questions because we can't get it wrong. There's plenty of questions that we can screw up. But this is one
so
where it's
true.
like, hey, what do you think? And I could say, I think that Swamp Thing should be an exact clone of the Flash, and all the abilities which would be the same. And that's not a good answer, but it's correct because it's what I think.
You're thinking incorrectly. Your thought process is, I know what you mean.
Yeah. But so we would probably our main kind of connection to Swamp Thing, I would say, is the really, really wonderful Swamp Thing comic that you recommended to me.
Oh, it was the original Alan Moore run. So he's not where Swamp Thing started was with Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson. Mm-hmm. Bernie Wrightson, amazing artist. If you haven't seen his version of Frankenstein, you've got to. He is amazing. But when Alan Moore revisited Swamp Thing's origin, right?
Yeah.
And he based it in a little bit of science, but he took it in a whole different direction. So instead of reimagining Alec Holland as, all right, spoiler alert, as a guy who was trapped in the Swamp Thing, it was that there were plants that believed that they were Alec Holland. Yeah,
they basically ate and consumed his memories. And so I think that the most interesting passive would be, although unfortunately it's not a very good one, is to do the kind of Killing Joke Joker thing where you take over people.
Oh no,
sorry, Unhinged.
Unhinged, right.
Sorry, Unhinged, yeah. Where you take over people. And I think there's a lot of ways that you could rework that. I think maybe you have it so that they keep some of their gear, or maybe they're passive, or maybe they just... Even if they took Swamp Thing's gear passive, they just need to maintain some of their power so that they're not just ungeared up, unpassived lump of garbage.
This is my biggest beef with Unhinged Joker. He's actually awful, even especially at a high level. When you want to use him to grind, he's no good for grinding. Yeah. Because when you pick up a character that has no passive and no gears, you don't actually want that.
Yeah, and then you just have to sit there and let him get killed, or you have to plink away, and with every hit you're wasting time and dealing almost no damage.
Right. It's like if there was maybe, all right, so the game fight's over, so we'll have to figure out if it's worth putting something on it at the end, some more footage, right? Yeah. But the only potential benefit he could have is basically as a meat shield. And to be able to time it just right so that when you knock out the other guy, that the person coming in is going to have a special or a super or something, and that the meat shield is going to be useful to you, is so low to be pretty much useless.
Yeah, and so I think that would be one thing, and I think the other cool things that they could do is maybe have him absorb some part of the enemy, whether it's just a basic increase of stats, which would be easily to implement, or what would be really cool is maybe absorbing 1 or 2 random gear abilities that the enemy has on them. I think that would be super, super cool, because it adds a sort of aspect of randomness, but that's something that feels good. But if it's just 1 or 2 abilities and it's at random, it's not going to be super overpowered.
And it would be consistent with the Swamp Thing.
Yeah, so that's how I would make him lore consistent.
All right, so it would be like a plant believing that it was Ra's al Ghul's scimitar.
It would be like a plant believing that it was equipped with Ra's al Ghul's scimitar.
Yeah, I think that... I mean, I would love to see Swamp Thing, right? I mean, the characters that I want to see, and I've said before that for the Injustice at least, part of the appeal is collecting the characters that I know.
Yeah.
So I would love to see Swamp Thing. I would love to see John Constantine. Any of those... Death! Sandman! They would be so cool.
Yeah. And if anybody has any specific ideas for a character they want to see, or some sort of thing that you could put on Swamp Thing, you can let us know in the comments. I think that would be interesting to hear from people.
Yeah, it would.
Okay, now we're out of time here. I think we got to do one last thing, which is give a big thanks to our patrons. Do you want to take it away?
Yeah, so we have a Patreon. It is... You can click on the link at the bottom right corner at the end of the video, or you can reach it by just going to www.patreon.com/bdckr. And we want to give a shout out to the people who are already supporting us and have been supporting us for a while now. That's a big thank you to Eddy G, Edwin Felix, and Console Peasant, who are supporting us at the highest last word tier. iProphet, or iProphet 3 as he's known on YouTube, who is supporting us at the Your Message Here tier. And Shawn, Farrell, and Daniel Simonson, who are supporting us on the credited level.
Thank you guys so much, and thanks so much to all of you for watching. We'll see you guys next time.
Komoda.